There's something about driving through the mountains at night that feels peaceful, the kind of peace that wraps around you like a quiet blanket. That night I was making my way through Oregon's Cascade Mountains. The road was narrow, winding, lined by towering fir trees that vanished into darkness above me. The air was crisp, and a thick fog had started to settle along the ground, swallowing the underbrush and softening the outlines of the trees. I felt calm, almost comforted by the stillness, the kind of quiet that makes you focus on the hum of your engine, the soft crackle of tires on gravel. I was alone, but it wasn't lonely. Just me, the road, and the night. As I drove, I passed an old wooden sign, faded and nearly hidden by moss. It read, "Logging Road Closed," but the gate was open, inviting in a strange way. A local had told me once that this stretch was used by loggers back in the day, but had long been abandoned. Curiosity nudged me to take the detour. I figured it would be a shortcut, or maybe just a glimpse of something forgotten. As I rounded a bend, that's when I saw him. A figure standing alone in the fog, just off the side of the road. At first I thought it was a man, but the mist distorted his shape, like he was part of the fog itself. I slowed, unsure. When I stopped, shining my headlights straight at him, he disappeared, just like that, into the thick white haze. I shook my head and kept going, chalking it up to a trick of the light. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. That first sighting haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure, standing silently, watching from the mist. The next few nights, I kept returning to that same logging road. The fog seemed to come and go like a breath, sometimes thin and wispy, other times so thick it felt like walking through clouds. I started noticing strange things. The radio in my car would crackle with static when I neared the road. The engine sometimes sputtered for no reason. Once I heard soft whispers, so faint I almost thought they were inside my own head. At first I told myself it was just the wind playing tricks, but the feeling grew heavier. A coldness seeped into the air around me, like the mountain itself was holding its breath. One night a flickering light caught my eye through the trees. It wasn't from my headlights. Something else was out there. A shadow moved between the trunks, just at the edge of my vision. I caught a glimpse of a face, pale, expressionless, eyes dark as pits. But when I blinked, it was gone. On another visit, I found a strange symbol scratched into a tree trunk. It looked ancient, like a rune from a forgotten language. I asked the locals about it. They exchanged uneasy glances and warned me to stay away from that road at night. They spoke of a driver who died in the 80s, trapped in a snowstorm, never found. They said his spirit still lingers, restless and searching, appearing when the fog rolls in thick. That's when the stories started to feel real. I couldn't stop myself. I dove into every record, every newspaper clipping I could find about the logging road and the driver's disappearance. The man's name was Tom Carlson, a logger and truck driver who had vanished during one of the worst snowstorms in Oregon's history. His truck was found abandoned, stuck in the snow, but Tom was never recovered. Some said he'd lost his mind out there. Others whispered that he'd stumbled onto something dark and dangerous, buried deep in the mountain. I met an old man at the diner who claimed to have seen Tom's ghost himself, a tall figure standing in the fog, holding a lantern that flickered like a dying flame. The locals believed the mountain was cursed, that the logging road was a threshold between this world and something else, a place where lost souls wandered endlessly, trapped in the mist. I became obsessed. I mapped every sighting, every symbol, every whispered warning. The deeper I went, the more I felt like I was stepping into a trap. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring into the fog for minutes, waiting to see if that figure would appear again. I was losing sleep. My friends started to worry, but I couldn't stop. Something was pulling me in, and I had to know the truth. It was the night I decided to face it. really face it. The fog was so thick that my headlights barely pierced through the gray. The air was icy cold, biting at my skin even inside the car. I parked near the spot where I first saw him. The silence was absolute, like the mountain was holding its breath. And then, he appeared. The figure emerged slowly from the mist. Tall, thin, his clothes soaked with rain or sweat. His face was pale, ghostly, eyes empty and unblinking. I could see the despair etched into every line on his face. He raised a trembling hand, not threatening, but reaching out. A cold wind rushed through the car, rattling the windows. The temperature dropped sharply. My breath came out in ragged clouds. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't move. He spoke, but his voice was like the wind itself, barely audible. "Help me." And just as suddenly, he vanished into the swirling fog, leaving me alone in the cold, trembling and questioning everything I thought I knew. I thought the story ended there, but it didn't. The more I dug, the more I realized something terrifying. Tom Carlson wasn't just a victim of the storm. He was part of something much older, a curse tied to the land, to the forest, and to the mountain itself. The logging road was built over an ancient burial ground, a place sacred to the native people who once lived there. And Tom, whether he knew it or not, had disturbed something that should never have been touched. Even worse, I found a journal belonging to one of the original loggers. It spoke of strange rituals, of sacrifices made to keep the mountain's spirits at bay, and I realized with a cold shock. I was connected to this. The keys I had found on the road, the symbols I'd seen, they were markers. And somehow I'd triggered the curse. The fog wasn't just hiding ghosts. It was a living, breathing force tied to me. That night I returned once more, this time with purpose. Beneath the snow and fog, I found something buried. A small wooden box, carved with the same ancient symbols. Inside was a relic, worn by time, a token of the past. As I held it, the fog thickened and a whisper filled the air. Words I couldn't understand, but felt deep in my bones. The figure appeared again, closer this time. His eyes were sad, but not angry. He reached out, and for a moment, I felt connected to something beyond this world, a tragedy frozen in time. I ran then, but I know the story isn't over. Sometimes when the fog rolls in and the night is quiet, I see him, waiting, watching. And I wonder, am I the next lost soul on this cursed road? So if you ever find yourself driving through the Cascades on a foggy night, beware the man in the mist, because some legends aren't just stories, they're warnings, and some horrors never leave. You know those moments that feel so ordinary, so routine, that you barely notice them? Like a quiet drive down an old highway at dusk. Nothing but the hum of tires on asphalt, the fading light brushing the edges of the trees. That was Linda's night. She was driving along a stretch of Pennsylvania's old highway, the one with cracked shoulders and rusted signs, the kind of place where time feels like it's standing still. She'd just finished a long day and was looking forward to getting home. Maybe a warm meal, some quiet. Nothing out of the ordinary. But something about that road always made her uneasy. The locals called it the Forgotten Stretch, a place with stories people whispered, but never shouted. Stories of shadows that moved just beyond sight, and strange figures hitchhiking late at night. Linda never believed those stories, until that night. As she drove, she saw her, standing by the roadside, soaked in the fading twilight, a woman who looked like she had nowhere else to go. A woman who said she was desperate to get home to her kids. It seemed like a simple act of kindness. But kindness on that highway sometimes comes with a price. The woman climbed in without hesitation. She was quiet at first, eyes tired and wet, clutching a worn handbag close to her chest. She said her name was Mary, and that she needed to get home. Her kids were waiting. Linda nodded, her heart softening. She'd seen that look before, the exhaustion, the hope clinging to a stranger's kindness. As they drove, the highway seemed to stretch endlessly. The trees pressed in tighter, shadows thickening at the edges of the headlights. Then something caught Linda's eye. Just a flicker, a movement out of the corner of her vision. She turned to speak to Mary, but the seat was empty, except for a damp patch on the leather. Linda's breath caught in her throat. She blinked hard, convinced it was a trick of the light or her tired mind playing games. But the damp spot was real, cold, clammy, and unmistakable. She pulled over, heart pounding, calling out into the night. No answer, no footsteps, only silence and the steady patter of rain. The strange thing started after that. A flickering streetlight overhead, a whisper just beyond the window, a soft voice that sounded like a child's laughter one moment, and then a desperate sob the next. Linda could feel eyes on her, shadows shifting in the trees. A chill settled in her bones, and the hairs on her neck stood tall. Was it just her imagination? Or something far more sinister? Linda couldn't shake it. The image of that woman haunted her. She started to dig, desperate for answers. She visited the local library, scrolling through old newspaper clippings, reading stories of accidents and disappearances. One headline caught her eye. Woman killed in highway crash, trying to get home to her children. Mary. The woman's name was Mary. Linda's hands trembled as she traced the faded photo. The woman looked exactly like the hitchhiker. Same tired eyes, the same worn handbag. She spoke to locals, many of whom avoided the subject. But an old man in a diner whispered about a curse tied to that road, about restless spirits trapped in a moment of tragedy, reaching out for peace they'd never find. Linda's obsession grew. She visited the roadside memorial, a small collection of flowers and notes pinned to a broken wooden cross. She felt the weight of the past pressing down on her. Each night her dreams twisted. Mary's voice calling, shadows closing in, the damp seat beside her appearing again and again. Linda began to question her own sanity. Was she chasing ghosts, or was something real trying to reach her? One night, driven by fear and curiosity, Linda returned to the highway. She parked near the memorial, the air thick with cold mist. Her breath clouded the air as she stepped out, every sound amplified. The crunch of leaves beneath her boots, the snap of a twig in the distance. Suddenly, a figure appeared, pale, soaked, standing just at the tree line. Mary. Her eyes were hollow, filled with a sadness that clawed at Linda's soul. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying a voice barely audible. "Help me." Linda reached out, but the figure dissolved like smoke. The air grew icy cold, and the car radio crackled to life, playing a soft lullaby that sent shivers down her spine. The shadows twisted and writhed, shapes forming and fading in the corner of her vision. Her heart thundered. Was this a ghost? A figment of her imagination? She knew one thing. Mary's story wasn't over. Linda felt trapped between two worlds, the living and the lost, and she couldn't escape. Then came the truth that shook Linda to her core. Mary wasn't just a stranger on the road. She was connected to Linda in ways she never imagined. An old family secret hidden beneath years of silence and denial. Linda discovered that Mary was her great-aunt, a woman erased from the family's story after that tragic crash. The woman wasn't just a ghost, she was a bloodline calling out, haunted by unfinished business, by secrets that refused to die. Suddenly, Linda realized she wasn't just a witness to the past. She was a part of it. The horror was no longer something distant. It was inside her. Back at the roadside memorial, Linda found a small, rusted locket buried beneath the flowers. Inside was a faded photo, a little girl's face staring back at her with eyes that mirrored her own. The past and present had collided, and the curse wasn't broken. As she drove away that night, the rearview mirror caught something. A shadowy figure watching from the tree line, waiting. Linda knew this was just the beginning. Some ghosts never rest, and some stories never end. So, the next time you see someone hitchhiking on an old, lonely road, ask yourself, are they really asking for a ride? Or are they trying to tell you something you're not ready to hear?